I'm Wem.
And I'm Lewis.
This is the Forest School Podcast.
Let's go! So many clipping. 1, 2, 3.
Good morning and welcome.
Should we do it like a chat show?
Sure.
Something like that.
So, Lewis, how did you feel about this particular episode?
The weather. This is the weather.
No.
And later.
It's supposed to be Blue Monday today.
Yeah.
But my friend said to me this morning, I'm going to rebrand this as Blue Sky Monday. Because look, there's actually a big cloud in the sky, but there's a bit of blue there. Anyway, what did you talk about today?
This episode we talked about briefly about the 6 Conversations book, and then mainly the chunk of it was about AI and about what AI is going to do to forest school training, what effect it might have on our learners,
what effect it has on education generally.
What effect it has on education generally.
The relationship between humans and machines. Humans becoming machines. Machines taking over the jobs of humans.
Yes.
Apocalyptic futures.
And there is a...
Light topics like that.
Yeah, light topics like that. There is a brief bit, it's about 2/3 of the way through, where we're talking about you. So to preface it, you start talking about a poem that a student has submitted, and just as a trigger warning, there's some conversation about suicide around that area. So if you get to that bit about the poem, skip ahead 5 minutes and you'll be alright with that one.
Yeah.
But I think it's a really interesting conversation. I think, topical, and timely and zeitgeisty, and I hope you enjoy it.
Yeah, enjoy.
See ya.
The Forest School Podcast has been and always will be completely free. But for those who want to help support our work, we've added just a few perks to our Patreon tiers, including a new Patreon-only Discord server and some extra podcasts for just £5 per month. The extra podcast content includes some really practical tips and tricks for improving your forest school and outdoor education provision. And so if you've enjoyed listening to us and you want to show your appreciation or just get more content and connect with other wonky leaders, you can head to patreon.com/Children of the Forest today.
But I do have to get 3, 2, 1. Lush!
Huzzah.
Huzzah, we're here.
This is so weird.
We've got lights.
We've got lights,
cameras.
we've got leads, we've got all the equipment. It's
intense.
I can't move now because there's leads just here. And,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not allowed to move.
stay
Not
here.
allowed to move. Not allowed to go to the toilet.
Yeah. But I've got coffee and water and snacks.
Good. And I've got a laptop and books.
Yeah.
And
You've got a bowl of snacks. I made you a bowl of snacks just there on the other side of the laptop, just there.
oh yeah, look at that.
There you go.
You went. What's a noisy thing I can give?
I
them?
know. But
Lush.
I've eaten all mine already.
Okay. Oh well, I'll put it there.
No, that's right.
So Happy New Year.
Oh, this is the first one.
This is the first one since New Year.
Hey,
Happy New
Happy New Year.
2023.
Here we are. Topical stuff. AI, right?
Yeah, well.
You want to talk about something else first?
I want to do. This is 6 Conversations: The Pathways to Connecting in an Age of Isolation and Incivility, by Heather Hollyman, which was recommended to me by Audible or something along those lines.
Artificial intelligence recommended it to you.
Yes.
Based on your previous preferences.
Based on my previous preferences.
And purchases.
And I actually really liked. I was telling you about it because there were some things, and basically you went, "You mean people like it when you talk to them about stuff they like?" well done, neurodivergent man. You've learnt about talking.
Did I really?
Yeah,
Sorry, that sounds harsh. That really sounds harsh.
This
Sorry.
great book and it's got these tips in it. You're like, yeah. you needed a book on how to talk to people.
I didn't mean that. I'm sorry if you felt I meant that.
It was. It's an interesting book. It takes quite a long time to get into. I'm sure if I can find the 6 types of conversation, because they were okay. So
social conversations, emotional conversations, physical conversations.
How can you have a physical conversation?
Like a conversation about physicality. Like how do you feel when you're playing sport? How do you think? Cognitive ones, which is like, what are you learning lately? How are you? This is slightly like, it's weird scripting because it's American. So I think this would not fly here.
In what way?
In just the way like, for an example of a cognitive one, the example they give you is, are you thinking differently about this news event from most people? And like, even if you put in news event, like if I went like, are you thinking differently about the TES exams from most people? It would just come across as weird and clunky.
That's strange, yeah.
But like, if you take a minute to sort of like digest it, put it in your own voice and go like, do you reckon they're onto something with the TES stuff or not? That is a much more... So the book kind of suffers from that.
But the idea being that you're really trying to get to know somebody on a deeper level rather than...
Yes, a lot of the first half of this book is about, are you someone who sort of does the, hello, you're right, yep, you're right, and then you freeze and panic and go, oh, be a grown-up and talk and do things. Yeah, so like, sort of follow-up questions and gives you a framework.
Yeah, that sounds good.
If that is not something that comes easy to you.
Volitional, conversational. What's that about?
Yeah. So
can you give me an example of a...
Let me go to the examples. How have you chosen to spend your time lately?
Okay.
Which is an interesting one.
Yeah.
What's the next big decision coming up for you?
Wow.
They're quite. Are you?
I'd feel quite threatened if someone asked me those questions.
Yeah, that's what I mean. But I think there is something cultural that British people are generally like.
Maybe that's why it's just so alien to us, social conditioning wise.
Socially what made you choose that great outfit, coffee, drink, outing / anything? Like if
oh
I
my God,
hey,
that's so.
What made you choose that great outfit?
I hate questions like that.
Yeah.
And I know people who do ask those questions, and and I know from the tone of voice and facial expression that they're doing it from a place of goodness, and they really want to get to know me better. But I'm like, back away. Don't talk about my clothes. Don't talk to me about my hair.
Yeah.
Why are you asking me those questions? I really, really hate it. That's so interesting, isn't it? I wonder if everyone hates it. Do you hate it? If I said to you, oh, what made you choose to wear that T-shirt today? How's that, like, instinct-wise? You feel fine about that?
I would feel like this was a bad T-shirt to wear, and you don't want to tell me. And
it's weird, isn't it?
It's a weird. We're like waiting for the 1-2 punch. They're like, what made you choose that? Because you look like a dick. What made you choose that? Has the electricity gone out in your house?
Yeah.
It's ones like that.
Maybe that's just... Yeah, maybe that is us and cultural.
Yes. So I'm also thinking about, like, could you use any of these conversation prompts with learners?
Yeah.
Like, do they... So some of these... How did you pronounce that word?
Volitional.
Volitional, thank you. It's one of those ones I can read it fine, because I don't need to say it out loud. What's your next step? How can I help you with your next step?
Yeah, that
perfectly
sounds good,
appropriate for learners. What can you control here, and what's outside of your control? Again, really interesting one for learners.
That's good.
But there's an element there of like, there's a hierarchy when you're talking to a learner. Like you're there as a guide, as a mentor, so it's less confrontational. There's something about like if I said to you, or if I said to like a mate, like, hey, what do you think you can control here, mate?
Yeah.
What's in your control?
Mate. Are you a psychotherapist or what? Like
I would feel a bit like those bits of Peep Show where Jez becomes a life coach.
Yeah. Oh yes.
And just doesn't.
But
stop.
you could, but worded slightly differently. So say you're on a walk with a friend and they are already in a place where they're explaining to you that they're feeling really like life is really hard right now, or they're in a stuck place, and then to phrase it slightly differently and say, I guess one way of looking at it would be to go, what can I control in the situation and what could I not?
Yeah.
That would be more...
That's what I mean. This book needs ingesting, making it into the British version of it, and then saying or not saying that.
Yeah.
The next one is the one that riled me. So this book is not in any way advertised as a very religious book. However, the author is very religious, and her God, I'm walking on eggshells. Her religious beliefs are in her book, which is not a bad thing, but not expecting.
She's making it,
not expecting it. It caught me off guard the first time, and then it took me conscious mental effort to keep going with the book, because, like we talked about when we both read different books, and we talked about spiritual bypassing.
Yeah.
And some of this is spiritual bypassing, and I was really pleased to have that word to look at this thing and go, that's what you're doing.
So in case listeners haven't heard of that, I'm guessing it's a way of kind of negating the emotions or the reality that the person is experiencing by going, well, that's just the plan, that's it's just the universe, or we should just really always emanate positivity, because it doesn't matter what you're feeling, just emanate positivity and the world will turn and you will get your reward, or that kind of thing about just overriding the actual reality for that person through a spiritual reasoning or language.
That was really challenging, which was like, talking about like confrontation and why people can't, have confrontations and disagreements, and how can we talk to each other about that? And it was like, and we should really just be putting that aside because of the light of Jesus that lives within all of us, and that's what should be connecting. And I was like, oh, you've picked a real social issue there and kind of brushed it under the rug.
Well, you've bypassed it.
Yeah,
exactly.
Spiritually bypassed. And so this person, one of the conversations, number 6, is spiritual conversations, which I would have prefaced spiritual conversations with like, whoa, put your kid gloves on, make sure you really know people beforehand. But again, that's me. That's
and
my
also
experience.
maybe is there any attempt to kind of incorporate many different types of spiritualities in there? No, it's just Christian spirituality.
Okay. This person is a university lecturer. In fact, what concerned me most as a Christian last year, as I taught highly academic and brilliant honour students, was the interest in and practice of witchcraft. My students talk about rehabilitating ancient witchcraft practices, including spells and divination. Those who say they wouldn't align with actual witchcraft like to talk about what seems harmless to them: astrology, manifesting, energy healing and crystals. Students use runes and spells before tests. They explain their restless moods as, of course, Venus is in retrograde. If you're thinking there's no spiritual activity or interest in the supernatural happening among young people today, blah, 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 blah. And then she talks about, like, that's scary to her, people doing witchcraft.
Yeah.
And she also talks about how she basically just decided everybody wants to hear her talk about Jesus. And that she was like, no one's ever corrected me, and no one's ever said they don't want to hear about Jesus. Which I feel like I really wanted to go, well, of course they wouldn't. That's really socially rude to be like, hey, I know you're talking about Jesus a lot, could you not? And she talks mostly about talking to her students for whom she's got a hierarchy. If your lecturer starts talking to you about Jesus, fucking I'd nod along.
Yeah.
I'd go, oh, yep, yeah. So, a really interesting book in that realm of like, you don't have to agree with a book 100%. This was an interesting mental exercise, spiritual exercise for me. I think if you are someone who wants to just think more about like the conversations you're having with learners, it could be helpful, and would be a thing that it asks a lot of questions and a lot of reflecting back.
Well, having those kind of books where it's got a little bit of a, not necessarily script, but some prompt kind of, example questions about ways you can start conversations or further them is always useful, isn't it? To have that kind of arsenal in your, arsenal's the wrong word, that's really kind of violent sounding, but some just little bits that you can
and I think as with all books we read, it's like throwing loads of stuff at the wall, and then in 6 months I'll go, nothing stuck from that book. Or, no, do you know what? Actually thinking about talking in these 6 ways, is been really helpful. Yeah. But it wasn't worth a full episode, but I did want to...
And it kind of ties in, I think, a little bit with the AI stuff.
Link.
I'm going to try. Because I guess if you're thinking about what it means to be human and the differences between, what's the other way of saying artificially created dialogue? Like, and where the gaps are, because it doesn't, AI can, all these like benefits and these things that it can do, it's so powerful, but it doesn't know what truth is, and it doesn't have any morals, and it's all those kind of soft skill stuff that maybe that book is touching on in terms of like human connection, not just like these are the words and this is the answer, but actually the nuanced stuff underneath all of that is what's interesting. Do you want to talk about why you wanted to do this episode? What kind of prompted you to...
So there was a thing going around. I've got my laptop here so that I can look at things. Did some prep.
Wow.
Did some things. Some of it this morning. So the AI chatbots kind of just sort of caught wind on the internet. They came out sort of November, December. They've been going around, apparently they've been around the Silicon Valley area for a while, but one became public and free and open for people to use, and so it became this sort of...
That's the GPT one?
Yes.
Yeah.
And it became quite an interesting thing of... I saw it mentioned in lots of different contexts of people who I know who write D&D modules being like, did you know I can write D&D modules? And I saw people who write song lyrics being like, hey, this thing can write pretty decent song lyrics. And like, it was sort of popping up, what's the word? Like not cross-curriculum, but multidisciplinary, what's the word? If you're a... polyglot is speeches,
Polymath.
isn't it? Polymath, yeah. It's a bit of a polymath thing. It was coming up in lots of places. And because I am still essentially 15, my brain immediately went, fuck, I bet this can write coursework. And it did. Yeah. And it like, I will put some examples in the show notes, but I put in a few different versions of like, so when you're, for people that haven't done their Forest School training or don't necessarily know the back end of it, the course modules have like, your students need to demonstrate X, Y, Z, and they normally have an example question of like, if you ask them this, that'll get you the evidence. But as a tutor, you are open to phrase that in a different way or to split it up into different questions, blah, blah, blah. And I wrote the ones that were very fact-based, I'll say, like knowledge-based. Like, I put in, can you write a 500-word description of the history of Forest School in the UK? Which anybody who's done their level 3, I'm fairly sure you will have done that, because you have to for your evidencing. And refreshed it a few times, changed the words, every time spat out a very slight variant, but my initial read of it was like, yeah, I'd pass that. Yeah. And I wouldn't have questioned it. If I didn't know that these chatbots existed, I think I would have read it as a tutor and gone, yeah, that's slightly out of character for you, but well done, you've written this perfect. But what did you think when you read them?
I thought the discussion, so you were having a discussion with in the Forest School trainers group on Facebook about it, because some people weren't aware of it, or some people had heard of it but only a little bit, and so you actually posted some of the answers that you had it create, didn't you? And some people were replying going, oh, okay, well, that's great that you've done that, thanks. So now we've got this answer now. So now we know that if our student writes that answer, it came from the chatbot. And you were like, well, no, because every single time you do it, it writes an entirely new answer. And then some people were just like, what? Like, so I come back the next day and ask the same question and it'll be completely different. So how on earth do you keep tabs on it? And then the discussion got really interesting because people were saying, well, this is our cue, actually, to move away from this written, go away, write this answer, submit it to me in whatever way you want to do it, by hand, over the internet, whatever, and move to more professional discussions or more face-to-face stuff, which is interesting. And that's kind of been my thought whilst I've been reading about it and listening to stuff in prep for this podcast, because there's a lot of stuff that's like real doom and gloom about it, and a lot of worry and panic, especially in the education sector, like from school all the way up to university and this level 3 stuff we're talking about. And then I'm beginning to, you take on all this like worry and panic and like, oh, what are we going to do? And how are we going to, know whether it's a person?
This is like a third of the coursework just gone because you can just type it in.
Yeah, and not just for our course, but for like other educational things. and also like creative things, you know. So if you're reading like the newspaper, how do you know whether that's human created or AI and all that stuff? Yeah, it's mental, isn't it? But then the flip side of it is this another step, especially looking at it from a kind of Forest School perspective, of going, is this another thing where you can go, okay, well then we disengage with it, and then we are going to do all our stuff face to face, and we're going to be outdoors all the time, and we're going to, you know, and it's just that other, if we're here on the spectrum of like nature connected, outdoorsy, hands-on skills, practical experiences, physical experiences, and then over here is, you know, people who are in an office in front of a screen all the time, then there's the potential for this to push us on this nature connection, outdoorsy reality, in inverted commas, side even further down that line. And I see that's quite a positive thing.
Yeah. So do you mean in terms of like assessing is quite, it sounds quite a scary word, but like in terms of assessing, you would be then going, we're not going to do this as a like evidencing and assessing are different things, I think. So I think what the push would be is it would make assessing somewhat easier, because over, you know, let's say a decent course is 10 days in person, and as long as you're not in a cohort of 30 people being shepherded around, you know, if you're in a cohort of 10, 12, that sort of number, over 10 days, you and I get to know people, and quite often we will go, okay, I'm going to go and collect this evidence by having this little conversation here. I'm going to go and collect this and write down the things they say. And do you see it then that you would push further into that, so that like by the end of the week you wouldn't be asking them to write a piece of coursework, or not by the end of the week, sorry, by the end of the course you wouldn't be saying, please could you write 500-word history of Forest School. You would be writing something that says, I as a tutor have had an informal chat and asked some questions and got their thoughts on the history of Forest School, and I believe they are up to scratch.
Yeah, or
so that
you just, or
easier, but evidencing
evidence, it becomes more mucky.
Yeah.
So, and some training providers do a much wider variety of evidence and, you know, evidence sort of collecting than others, don't they? But we already do a lot of professional discussions, and that is there for learners, especially if they don't really like writing. They find it much easier to communicate face-to-face and through speech. And I think it just opens the door and pushes you more into that, like, that person over here is going to submit like a watercolour painting actually about the history of Forest School in the UK with some text on it, and this person over here is going to just sit down with me and tell me what they've found out. This person is going to do like a timeline with photographs or whatever, which is, in some ways harder to assess because you're trying to assess a watercolour painting next to... But the good thing about level 3 is that there's no like grade A, grade B. It's pass or fail. Have they given me enough evidence? And I'm not actually going to pass a moral judgment or a kind of, not moral, but I'm not going to assess how great this is. Like, I can give you feedback in terms of like, oh, this has clearly taken you a lot of time and you've really evidenced this well. But it's like, have they given me the evidence or not? Do they need to give me more? So you don't need to rank. It's not a competitive piece of learning, is it?
Thanks to everybody that's rating and reviewing the podcast on Spotify and on iTunes. It really helps to get the podcast in front of more people and helps us spread the word about the amazing thing that is Forest School. Do you think it would move... So most courses, most Forest School qualifications have got that bit in them where it's like, can you read some research articles and like review it, reflect it, do whatever. Evaluate it, yes. Do you think it pushes then more things into that, in that you would go, please use... So what I've seen a lot of online is like, the chatbot now, as it exists, and that's come into the world and it's free, and the access that it gives is possibly not dissimilar to 50 years ago, let's say, where one or two well-off families would have had access to a library of encyclopedias. This was in an article, this was in a Guardian, I think, and they were saying, in the 80s, if you were well off, you had access to an encyclopedia, and so when all the children were sent home to write a report about blue whales, those children with access to an encyclopedia have got an advantage over those children that have got to go to the library, or have got to go to this, or go to whatever. But where it doesn't give you an advantage is in the, like you were saying, the creative element of it. So is there a world where it moves from write about the history of Forest School to please submit, or here is an AI generated history of Forest School, and then we're going to have a professional discussion about your thoughts about it. Because that's much more engaging. It's like, I always think this AI pushes everything knowledge-based out the window.
Although it can be wrong. So
But that's
in the
where
reading
you
about
would
it,
check it, and
right.
you would hand this to student, or you would go, it doesn't, take the AI bit out of it, then you go, this is the history of Forest School as an article.
Yeah.
Read it, we're going to have a professional discussion about it. You don't need to write this. What's the purpose of you writing this? What is the purpose of you copying out?
That's very good.
thing
Yeah,
that
it's very
exists?
true. It's like, what do you think about this? Is there anything that surprised you?
Yeah.
You know, yeah.
And
absolutely
asking
right.
those like
Yeah.
secondary questions and being like, that is actually probably what you're trying to elicit.
And do you know what? The thing that I've been mulling over with this AI stuff is not just like Forest School stuff, but like education in general.
Yeah, well, exactly.
Exactly that. So I'm sure, along with a lot of people who are involved in our kind of field of work, you know, I'm like, what you ask that question, like, what is school for?
Yeah.
And it should not be about knowledge acquisition. Like, that is the least useful now at this. And and this again like pushes that absolutely factually. That sort of goes, well, if you as a teacher genuinely can't tell the difference between an essay your student's writing and an essay they've asked an AI bot to generate for them, then just don't do the essays. Like, just don't worry about it, and spend a long time working on how to trust information that you're getting through these technological sources, because a lot of the stuff I was reading was about how the bot stuff can be wrong, but is very confidently wrong. So you can't. So it's not like woolly and a bit.
Was it the peregrine dolphin? Was that the example you saw?
No, I didn't see
I
that.
saw some of the example, and it was like, what is the fastest mammal?
Okay.
Sea mammal, water mammal or something.
Yeah.
And it invented the peregrine dolphin.
Oh, amazing!
That could fly at 50, and it wrote, and the person had then asked it follow-up questions. What does it live? And it had gone, peregrine dolphin
Wow.
lives in these places, and it migrates here, and like.
That's amazing.
But then you're asking, like you're saying, to that like assessing the source to go. Yeah. You should kind of know the peregrine dolphin, or you should be checking 3 or 4 sources to go. I think there's peregrine dolphin.
I watched a really interesting lecture by a guy called Ian McGilchrist, who's a psychiatrist in neuroscience. And I think it was at like this summit about AI that he was speaking. And oh my God, I mean, if you want to feel really rubbish about the world, like watch this speech, because it is full on doom and gloom. But it's kind of interesting because he's talking about, he's going, well, yeah, AI is this thing, but it's a symptom of human development in the Western world right now. Like, it's just a symptom of how crap we are right now and how we've come on this train. And he's like, and he talks about the left hemisphere of the brain and the right hemisphere of the brain. And it's like, we have basically cut off our right hemisphere, and the development that we've made in recent years is all left hemisphere focused. So it is component parts without seeing the big picture. It is being confident about one thing or the other, even if you're wrong, just going, no, it's this, and not being ever like, I'm not actually sure about that. That is valued, like being sure about yourself and about a theory or a thing.
Especially even if you take that outside of academia, in cultural things, if you are a celebrity who is firmly for, it doesn't matter what the thing is, firmly for your workout routine, your juice cleanse, your way of parenting, your whatever, that is valued above being what's the word? Can't think of the word now.
They're like sitting on the fence or going, I'm not really sure.
A moderate anything doesn't get you anywhere.
Yeah,
what
absolutely.
gets people anywhere is like polarizing. Yeah. Ba-bum.
Exactly, and that's what he says, and he's saying that it's very similar to you're looking at ancient Greek and ancient Roman civilizations, that you have this kind of like right hemisphere focused kind of blossoming of art and poetry and philosophy and like asking those big questions about life and stuff. And similarly in Western Europe, the Renaissance, and then it continues, and you're like, oh, it's amazing, that's how it all flourishes and begins, and then it becomes more and more and more left hemisphere focused. So all that art and poetry and stuff is stripped away, and it's more just like, what are the facts, the growth, the creation, making things, more of it, and power, and just getting more power through not being like, oh, I'm not really sure, and not stepping away and going, for example, the stepping away might be we've done industrialization, but hang on a minute, stop, what's happening to the countryside, or what's happening to these species, whatever. Don't worry about that now, don't even think about it, don't step back and go, oh, I'm not sure this is a good idea, just create and gain more power and more money. And that's when it all collapses. So he's like forecasting the collapse of Western civilization. Especially through like this reliance on computer and, you know, artificial stuff. It's like leaving us open to this incredible power being used in the wrong way and all these kind of things. So he's like full on doom and gloom. But he also says that that thing we're talking about, you know, if machines are going to replace humans, then if we get more in touch with what it means to be human, which is all these like emotional stuff, the
Forest School.
Forest School, man. Yeah.
Just to vaguely, we should probably mention Forest School. It's been like half an hour. We should probably mention Forest School.
But it is relevant, I think.
No, it is.
Because, and it's almost like if you're thinking about the learners that you're working with, I've been thinking either we're going to lose them or we're going to get them even more interested in this other way of being, another way of learning. And like time will tell.
Just to be clear, you don't mean the specific people, individuals. Do you mean like in
culture, I guess,
as a cultural, you know, as a customer base, as a
and
community.
Schools, for example. Like I was really thinking recently about like, because there has been a bit of a boom and resurgence, well, not resurgence, but you know, increased awareness of Forest School in the UK and schools and things like that. And I was like, is that going to continue as the technological world increases in power and increases in the way that it's involved in our everyday life, or is it going to actually just dribble away again? Our school's just going to go, well, it doesn't really seem relevant anymore because we really need to be focusing on this like tech-based education. It'd be really interesting to see which way it goes.
Well, I was looking at, there's quite a lot of articles I found about schools in America like officially banning it. There are, so apparently Ofsted and exam boards will be issuing guidance on the next round, which is like an official kind of, this is how you spot AI, or this is how, so it doesn't really go, the articles I found didn't really go into what their advice was going to be, but the Ofsted will be, or the exam boards at least, I shouldn't mix those up, the exam boards will be, in the same way that they issue, you know, make sure students sit on individual desks, make sure they have that. Interesting, they kept talking about exams, which I don't actually think it's an issue in. I think the issue is in coursework.
Yeah, surely.
Not issue. When issue makes it sound like a bad word, like the problem. What I mean is like the area of interest will be coursework.
And homework and things. So if you're...
Yeah, but
if you're kind of teacher who's setting homework to kind of assess somebody's understanding and where they are with something, it's like, okay, we've done this in class, now go away and process that information that we've done in class and present and create a presentation, an essay or whatever, and I'll mark it to assess where you are, to see where you've got that concept or whatever. If someone's going away and doing their homework using an AI bot, then obviously you're not going to understand.
I don't think it's that dissimilar. So when I was just leaving so I had a weird school system. So my middle school was year 5 to year 8. So how old are you in year 7? Like 12?
11.
11? 12? So I can remember being savvy enough you had to do it with a guillotine. When you used to print stuff off the internet, it would print the web address at the bottom of the page, which the teachers cottoned onto, and then were like, this has got a web address, you have ripped this off the internet. Because I didn't even know about copying and pasting. I was literally printing the web page.
Wow.
But if with a guillotine you could slice it, then it was a clean line. And it was quite hard to notice that I had taken that stuff. And I think that's like a different intelligence, it's a different way of knowing. It's like... I think that was probably the first point where I realised, like, oh, you're playing a game, and I can play this game as well, and I can do these things to play this game.
Which just opens up that, like, wider question about education. If that's the relationship,
and now I'm in charge of people's education, and I used to cut the fucking web address off.
Well, we all did. We were all playing the game. It's just a game, isn't it? It's a game, and it sort of highlights that. I only recently, last month, I read a poem, and I was like, I can't remember who it was by now. It's this incredible poem and about a samurai, I think. And I read it and I was like, I recognise this. I was like, oh my God, this is the poem that year 10 boy that I used to teach submitted for homework one time. And I was like, I googled it to check.
Yeah.
Didn't come up because I was like, this is an incredible piece of work from somebody who just doesn't ever show any interest in English ever. This is absolutely amazing. Googled it, didn't come up. He really has written this. This is absolutely amazing. And he clearly copied it out of a book, and it actually wasn't on Google yet. No one had actually put it into the internet. And this was like, over 10 years ago. And I'd given him this incredible praise. I think maybe even read it out in class. Like,
So this is very odd because I had exactly that story.
Oh, really?
On the other side.
You did it? Did you own up? No.
Of course not. I got sent on a... So I was good at school. I was all right. Despite the cheating, I was all right. And there was we got sent on a gifted and talented trip to Oxford, to walk around when we're like 14, so that they could be like, "Ooh, you can knuckle down now," and then basically it was a day off school.
Yeah.
Right. I went there, and then a month later they were like, "You haven't handed in your like essay or piece of work that you were supposed to do," and I was like, I thought it was just a DOS.
Right.
And I found the lyrics to a song by a band called Cannibal Corpse.
Right.
and I was all about like, I just literally went like, suicide, that'll do. It's called like My Beautiful Suicide or something shit like that. And the teacher like, was understandably...
That's safeguarding call.
Yeah. Then pulled me up and was like, this is quite interesting. Why?
Yeah.
And I managed to bluff out something of like, oh, whenever we went past a statue, which is true in Oxford, they would go, this person, they did all this amazing stuff, and then top themselves. And then, and this person worked really hard, excelled in academia, and then, took their own life at whatever else.
Really?
Wow. And just kept going on. And I managed to bluff through this thing of like, you showed me all these statues of people that had done this, and so I wrote this poem. But it's very interesting that we had the same story, but on opposite sides.
Yeah.
I want to read this thing from TES. No, I don't, actually. I don't want to ask that. I want to ask you a question, and I want to ask, do you think that AI is, and especially we can combine this with AI images, so like all the art bots that are going on, and all the face, have you seen the face AIs? And you can create people, and you can just put people, and these people never, they just amalgamate and whatever else. But do you think this is the dividing point now between deeply holistic, relationship-based Forest School training and what I'm going to very callously and flippantly call MOOC trainers?
Yeah.
That thing of... She's just gone.
I'm here.
Gone to let the dog out. Never go back to mundane marshmallows ever again. Forest School Cooking, the cookbook, covers everything from how to build and use different types of outdoor ovens, stoves and equipment, right through to a range of different meals to keep anyone full and ready for the next adventure. Get your copy today on Amazon.
Yeah.
So, what I'm imagining is, if I wanted to, in air quotes, if I wanted to be that 15-year-old again and cut the web address off the bottom of my homework, and this is an online only level 3, I can submit essays about the history of anything, about, why is holistic... I even asked the AI, like, why is risk important at Forest School? And it smashed it. And it came up with the reasons. I asked it to write risk assessments and gave it the points to cover. And it didn't nail that.
Right.
But it did do a lot of the work.
Yeah. And it waffles. And I was reading about why it waffles. So one of the reasons it's so convincing, apparently, is because it gives longer answers. It tries to give longer answers where it can. And that's because it has had human trainers. So that's how it's created. It's had all these people... sorry, I'm going to let the dog in.
Yeah. It's had human trainers. It's been taught on human speech. It's not been taught to succinctly and specifically find factual answers.
No, and it has, and then they test it by asking it questions and getting its answers, and then they rate those answers from best to worst over ages and ages
This is
and
how
ages.
machine learning works, though, isn't
Yeah.
it? Like they just pick,
Yeah.
it makes a million variants, it
Yeah.
picks the ones that get it right, a million more, it picks the ones that get it right.
And apparently the human responses, they have definitely given higher ratings to the answers that are longer. So it's been trained
Okay.
to give longer answers in general,
Okay.
which apparently is one of the ways where it isn't quite right. Like you can kind of, it will like
can
say
hear.
the same thing
Yeah.
again, but in slightly different words, just to make it, but it also sounds more confident. So
Yeah.
if you can see through it, you can go, oh yeah, okay, I can tell that it doesn't really know what it's all about because it's a bit like us.
But shit,
We waffle them.
I've been a hologram this whole time.
If you don't really know about something, just talk about it a lot at length
Into a microphone.
into a microphone and then record yourselves doing it.
But what I was, if it's a trainer that's never met me, could I, in theory, hand in chatbot essays and, without too much work, get chatbots to put reflections in? So I haven't tested this one, but I'm fairly sure if I wrote down like, could you write a review of a Forest School session where this happened and this happened, and I struggled with this? I don't think it would have any issues. I could probably submit photo evidence at least if I got it to learn what I looked like, and I got it to say, could you show photo evidence of me whittling?
Would it do that? Really?
If it can't now, we're not far off it. It can make a face, and if you put into some of the art ones, like I put in, I was doing it with my kids, and we were putting in like bat shit stuff. Right? We're putting in, it was like scientist putting we on a tree underneath a giant duck. Got it.
Wow.
And it can do that. So
Wow,
for
yeah.
me to go, could you take this face and put a picture of me?
Do you think it gets to the point though, especially with the type of people who might be interested in Forest School, actually doing all that is harder work than actually doing the real thing?
For some people, but for some people, like, what I mean is, like, does it devalue those online-only courses even more? Because if someone gave me £100, I'd get them through their level 3 online.
Would you really? That's how
No,
low
I
your
don't.
morals
No,
are.
I don't. But what I mean is, like, I could.
Yeah.
I could, if someone said, like, I've got this submission for for online only. They don't know what I look like. They've never spoken to me. I need to submit this coursework. I think it would be significantly easier. We already know it is significantly easier. Is this the death nail of those online only courses, or is this just a split? Will this go anywhere? What do you reckon?
I have no idea. That's a really interesting question. I don't know. It'd be interesting to see if the people that provide online only courses write any kind of response to this. A bit like you're saying, Ofsted and the exam boards are going to do that. And whether, I mean, the FSA already doesn't recognise 100% online courses, does it? If you've qualified that way, then you can't become a full FSA member. Is that right?
I think so.
So
Might be a registered recognised trainer.
okay,
Provider, I mean.
a recognised provider. So you can join. You can join the
can
FSA
join.
even if you're not qualified, right? Can't you? Yeah. I know. Or are they just going to bury their heads in the sand and just continue? Because actually, I guess it depends what their motivation for running the courses is. If it is just literally to make money and capitalise on a trend, then they're not going to release any statements and they're going to carry on because, you know, is there a human anywhere in that company who actually cares that the trainers that are... So that's really negative for me, isn't it? I'm
Well,
sure
just
there
how
are...
long does something take to feed through an organisation that's bigger like that, that's online, you know? How long would it... So for reference, there are things like, you know, Turnitin, that's the plagiarism checker.
Okay,
So that they have come out recently and said, we can detect AI.
right.
We can. So if you're a company that's paying for Turnitin, or, you know, there's other alternatives, like we use some different ones as well.
Yeah.
But Turnitin have come out, this big university one, Turnitin, have said, we can definitely recognise AI,
Right.
and we can, you know, mark it and flag it. But I wonder, I didn't go very deep into the article, I'd be interested to see what their false accusation rate is, because that's much higher. That I feel like it would be much higher. I'm waffling now on things I don't know about to sound convincing. Like I'm a real human.
I know, and to can you imagine as somebody receiving a piece of work handed in and you're like, I'm not sure if this is written by AI. how the conversation would go with that learner.
Yeah.
To accuse them of doing that.
Well, I think that's why you gently ask those reflecting follow-up.
Yeah.
You know, how did you feel about those
so you
things?
may as well
because you may as well jump and just do that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Another thing I want to ask is, I am a big believer that there is not that I can think of. Yeah, I'm gonna go. As we've just said, polarizing is the way of the doomed future. I don't think you could give a piece of technology that I would say there is zero use for learners having this at Forest School.
Sorry, say that again.
So, what I'm getting at is, like, some people have in their heads, and I have been there. I have been on this journey. No mobile phones. Mm-hmm. No tablets. Do not come out.
Yeah.
We shouldn't even really have digital cameras because it's distracting. Oh, this person's brought in a dictaphone.
Yeah.
There's no reason to have a dictaphone.
Yeah.
I am of the belief that the technology, the pieces of, I'm going to say hardware at least, maybe not all software, like apps, there'd be certain apps where I'd go, I'm struggling to find a reason for that one. But in terms of hardware, there's not any hardware that I would say
has no place.
No place. Especially when you include the wider scheme of, like, different learners' needs or different places in our journey of, like, is that the first thing that people need to get them out into an outdoor space? Is that something people need so that they can deal with the stimulation that's going on outside? Is this something that people need to cope with this, to engage with the social action, interactions? Because, like, you know, that's where they've been before. So that it's, you know, I don't think there's a thing. So...
Applications to complete Level 3 Forest School leader training here with us at Children of the Forest are now open. Train with me and Lewis at our woodland site in Devon. We'd love to meet you in person. Visit myforestschooltraining.co.uk to find out more.
What I'm kind of walking towards is, like, is there a future where you have, you know, like some fridges have, like, a tablet built in on the door,
right?
Or like that. Is there a place where you have, like, an AI somewhere, like an AI station at Forest School? Or is there a different use for AI for learners now? Not trainees and tutors and all those things, but, like, learners outside. Is there a legitimate use or benefit to them having access to AI during a Forest School session?
I'm sort of thinking about using it creatively, a bit like you're saying when you're playing with your kids with it. You could look at it as creative learning if you are still the one who's saying to the AI, create a fill in the blank using this, and this.
Okay.
You're giving it the ingredients and playing around with it and seeing what it spews out with. So, for example, a bit like, you know, we've sometimes done...
like Mad Lib stories.
Yeah, like, or like tree poetry. We're all laid on the floor and looked up at the tree, and we've gone, like, given a word that pops into mind but when we look at the tree, and then we've put those together and, like, made a wonky
like
poem
a
out of it.
Or whatever,
yeah, exactly.
Okay.
What, you know, if you are giving it those ingredients and going, mix it up, AI, go for it. Like, that is a type of creative play that I see having value for sure. Or, like, making up a story with these elements that we're thinking about right now. Or so, I do see value in that for sure. There is something, you are removing a human element of that, so you can still do those things without AI. So
it's a hard question. I realise that's a bit...
It is a hard question. I don't know. It depends how pessimistic you're being in general. If you're if you're thinking the reliance on technology and the reliance on machine-created stuff is leading to the destruction of our species, if you're on that train...
Or even just to be like, that is met in other parts of their lives, and Forest School is a place where that doesn't, you know, like Forest School doesn't have to meet everything that's going on.
Or you're just worried that it is kind of creeping into every single facet of life and that it is dehumanising us, because that's another thing that was said in this talk that I watched, is like, as well as machines replacing humans, his idea is that actually humans are becoming more like machines because they're sort of devalued. So he gives an example of any kind of process that used to be face to face, so whether it's shopping or banking or any kind of transactional thing where you would have gone to a place and spoken to a human, and now we've saved time because we're doing it all online through machines. His first argument is it actually doesn't save time. It does the opposite, because you end up in a rabbit hole of distractions and stuff.
Sure.
And the other thing is that if you do get through to a human because you need to, so you're on a call or whatever, or you're on a chat thing which is genuinely a human on the other end, by the time you get through to that human, they are completely dehumanized and restricted in their responses and their power, because they are still using a machine and they've got like a script and they've got, okay, so you're having problems with this or this, and you're like, well, none of those things, or
you're in a flow chart.
His thing is you can tell
I've got
through.
Talk about that. So
it's like you can tell through speaking to somebody that they are completely dehumanized and sad, and their power and control has been taken away from them.
They're doing the only tiny bit that can't be done by a machine, which is selecting an appropriate response from them.
Yeah, and they don't have any authorization, I guess, to make a solution to the problem that is beyond the realms of the machine-generated thing. So if you're kind of worried about that and thinking there should be time where just the human stuff, like compassion, morality, all those things are valued, and that if it's kind of filtering into all areas of life, you want to have some time where
a break
and time to practice those things that are genuinely human and can't be done by machine, then I can also see that point that you might trivially go, oh, let's play with this AI in terms of making a poem.
Do you feel like it's a big step further, or how close is it to... So you and I, as far as I'm aware, use the speech function on our phones in almost an identical way, in that we just use it to set alarms.
Yeah.
But some people use it to... So I had somebody came to one of our sessions, and it was a little girl, she was like 8 or 9, and I pointed out a tree or something, and she wanted to know more about it, and she turned right round to her mum and said, near her mum's pocket, "Okay, Google, sorry if I've set anybody's phone off," but her gut reaction was like, "I want to know about that." And I said, "Oh, that's it's a buzzard's nest up there." She went, "Okay, Google, what does a buzzard eat?" And then the pocket went, and the mum was like, "Oh, sorry, we use that to like answer everything in our house."
Wow.
So do you think... So my question is basically, is using Siri in that way, because it's not the way you and I use it, possibly because of our age, like we're just not inclined to do it, is using Siri a massive step further than using these chatbots? And is there an issue with using Siri in sessions?
I know, and sorry, I'm avoiding the question, but it's making me think about some stuff that I read about this technology supporting neurodivergent learners, dyslexic learners, so those learners who are really relying on this technology, especially voice to text stuff, being a way of expressing themselves. Yeah.
Here's an interesting answer. Here's an interesting thought, though. So if AIs are being taught on human feedback, I like that answer, I didn't like that answer. Is there a world in 5 years, 10 years, probably like 2 months, where, when you get a new phone and sometimes they used to go, can you just say all of these phrases so that we can get used to your voice, right? So I'm thinking about, I've worked with people in the past who have had attention deficit disorders in a way that means that they struggle to follow information. Yeah. Is there a way that they could spend half an hour, a day, whatever it takes, training a chatbot to explain things in ways that make sense to them, and then rather than it being like a generic, this is a chatbot that talks like a human, it's like an interpreter bot that then goes like, you almost pull it out and go, I'm not following what's going on.
Yeah, a bit in the same way
you, as... the teacher, can you talk the instructions into here, and what my tablet will do is put those instructions in a palatable way for me.
Yeah. It will give me it will break it up into chunks.
Either smaller chunks, or it will
longer
use
pauses.
words like no.
Yeah.
It will.
And really, what's the difference between that and wearing a microphone that picks up your voice for someone who's wearing hearing aids?
Yeah. Well, I think there's something about it synthesizing. Is what I'm.
But in terms of
interesting.
the meeting the needs of the learner.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, it's very interesting. I don't think it should be something that the Forest School community sees as a blip and then stops looking at. I think we need to keep an eye on it. It's really interesting, but and not in a just a doom and gloom. God, there's another thing that's coming into the woods. Like, we should be looking at this and going, this is great. Do you know what the jobs will be of the successful people of the future? Will be people that can use this technology, not the people that can consume the technology, can use it. To make their jobs easier, to get out of not doing homework.
That's exactly actually. That's exactly actually in this Ian McGilchrist thing. Right. He ends it by saying exactly that it can be used in a positive way if you allow people who are interested and people who are thoughtful and people who are creative to have it at their disposal with unlimited time and no pressure. So his example was, not like, when are you going to publish this article? How many things have you published so far? When have you invented the thing? How much money have you made from it? That to go, actually, you're going to give those people time to use their right hemisphere thinking with this to assist them, without an end goal, without a money focus. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yes.
Well,
cool.
We'll wait to see.
Yes.
And maybe we can feed all of this into an AI. See what comes
It'd probably
out.
be a lot better.
Would burn.
It would take about 25 seconds.
Oh, yeah. Lush.
Great. Nice.
Cheers, mate.
Bye.
Bye.